By Eric Walker, and author of the newly released book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Light. Visit ignitinganation.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page. Type in your email address and get the first chapter for free, and then order a copy for yourself. We're meeting this morning with Eric Bryant, author of the new book, Not Like Me, Learning to Love, Serve, and Influence Our Divided World. Growing up in the Bible Belt gave Dr. Eric Bryant a unique perspective on life and insider knowledge of Christian culture, but when he and his wife Deborah moved from Texas to the West Coast in the 90s, he suddenly found himself in a world of color. The colliding of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant worldview of his youth and the diversity he found as part of a church planting team in Seattle, and then later as a youth pastor in Los Angeles, fueled his passion for helping Christians speak the language of loving others who aren't like them. In light of the message of Jesus, his book, Not Like Me, Love, Serve, and Influence Our Divided World, aims to help Christians connect to the heart of God by removing the religious baggage that often comes with Christianity and discover the world Jesus intended. He serves Gateway Church in Austin, Texas as the lead pastor for Gateway South and is part of the teaching team alongside senior pastor John Burke. A church known for both creativity and diversity, Dr. Bryant served on the leadership team with Erwin McManus at Mosaic in Los Angeles from 1998 to 2010. In 1994, he and Deborah helped plant a church in Seattle. While not serving at teaching at Gateway, Dr. Bryant teaches master's level courses in post-Christian ministry and leads a cohort for Doctor of Ministry and Missional Effectiveness students through Bethel Seminary in San Diego, California. He's founded the Eric Bryant Foundation. Dr. Bryant and the foundation work to help churches and nonprofit organizations find their calling, catalyze community, and create change agents through training events, workshops, and resources. He's the author of A Fruitful Life, Becoming Who You Were Created to Be, and co-author of the Uprising Experience, a workbook he co-wrote with Erwin McManus and Rick Yamamoto. He also hosts the Start Good Things podcast, which features businesses, leaders, and creatives starting good things in their circles of influence. They live near downtown Austin, and he is a man who I am proud to introduce and welcome to our program. Dr. Eric Bryant, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You know, I love the fact that in your biography, you start out by clearly acknowledging that there is this world which is, in Christianity, isolated, set apart. We all look the same. We invite people from our subdivision, and we call that the Great Commission because we invited our white Anglo-Saxon Protestant next-door neighbor who lives in the same subdivision and belongs to the same clubs, and we call that the Great Commission. And we go to our church, and there's 700 or 800 gathered, and you look around, and everybody looks the same. There's not the diversity. Then you have the Hispanic church, which is meeting in the other building, and you look around and they're all Hispanic, Latino, they all look the same, and they're all very comfortable in their world. And then you go into the inner city and you've got the black church, which serves a very important need for that community. And all of a sudden you begin to say, are we racially divided? Or is there supposed to be this melting pot where we're different than the world? I grew up in the 50s. My family couldn't belong to certain clubs. We were Jewish. I moved to Atlanta in 1975. I played in a golf tournament in 1976 at a country club that I could not be a member of. And this is modern day history where discrimination, and now we have Christianity, which is colorblind, ethnically blind. There's only two people in the Bible, Jews and Gentiles. That's all there is. There's not Buddhists and Taoists and Latinos and Chinese. There's Jews and Gentiles. And that's it. That's all God created in the Bible. in your background, you grew up and you self-proclaimed that you were surrounded with people that looked like you, sounded like you, acted like you, prayed like you, and then you were confronted. What was your initial reaction when you saw this cornucopia of color?
Well, in many ways, I think my experience may be similar to others. Unknowingly, we just assume that everybody else's experience is like our own. And so when we create a Sunday morning experience and we choose the songs we like and we talk about the things that interest us and we invite our neighbors who might look differently, all of a sudden we start to realize, well, maybe they don't see the world the same way as I do. And I think it was a slow understanding of my experience was so much in a bubble. And frankly, anyone can grow up if their parents so choose, and if they don't decide to stretch themselves, as like you described, moving to Atlanta, just moving to a big city, all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, things don't operate here the same as where I grew up. And so certainly for me, trying to discern and figure out when all of the leaders were Caucasian in Seattle, then moving to Los Angeles and being a part of a church where all the leaders were not Caucasian, and eventually I became the only Caucasian elder. It was a really unique experience to be able to be a minority and to have that sort of frame how I look at ministry a lot differently.
When you first saw this tapestry of the body of Christ, black, white, yellow, brown, every nation, every tongue, you met them in the church, so they were already believers, or they were seeking or finding, but somehow they were there. That's where you met them at first. But you also, and I lived in Los Angeles for 7 years, so I know that my next door neighbor over here was Chinese, my next door neighbor over here was Latino, my neighbor at the top, I was in a flag lot, the neighbor at the top of the flag lot was from Argentina, and the neighbor who I had to drive past up my driveway on my way to my middle flag lot house was just a good old, Caucasian American. And Atlanta was a cacophony of color and sound. And I went to synagogue, and we all looked the same. I grew up in the synagogue. We all look the same. Now, if I go to Kaifeng, China, to the synagogue in Kaifeng, China, they're going to ask me, why am I there? And I'm going to say, I'm Jewish. And they're going to say, well, funny, you don't look Jewish. because they're a Chinese Jewish congregation. But Christianity is not supposed to have.
That's right.
We're supposed to be color blind. We're supposed to have this lens which unifies, and a language called the gospel message, which is also the great unifier when spoken through the power and the anointing of the Holy Spirit. But yet, I still hear today, I'm 44 years before I heard Jesus was Jewish. How do you miss that message for 44 years? Well, because the movies said he was Jesus, King of the Jews. Well, that was a mockery. That didn't identify him as a rabbi. That didn't identify his Jewishness. That just was like a swastika painted on my synagogue. No different. The language outside the church is really what has become the focus of this, is how do you deal with people that aren't like you?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think to even move past being colorblind and really begin to value people for who they are and where they're at, and like you described, in the big cities, sometimes it's easier to become a diverse church community, but even in those big cities, there's very few diverse church communities because it really does take an intentionality of pointing people towards Jesus, no matter where they may be on their spiritual journey, and actually celebrating that the scriptures talk about our time in heaven will include people from every tribe and nation and tongue. I teach a cohort at Bethel Seminary. You mentioned it earlier, and in my cohort, we have a Southern white pastor. We have a Messianic Jewish counselor. We have a Nigerian pastor, Arab American pastor from Southern California. Like it is a beautiful, and there's many others. It's very diverse. It's a very beautiful microcosm of what God is doing around the world. And in part, my book is really an attempt to encourage the church to see itself as set apart in terms of our behavior, but sent out in terms of our relationships. And unfortunately, the church sometimes reverses that. We're set apart in our relationships, hiding from the world, a shelter from the world. But really, we're supposed to be sent out into the relationships. It's in the book that I mentioned that suburbs were actually invented by evangelical Christians to get away from the evil city. And really, people of faith should be going into the city, going into those spaces where the world is not.
You call this a field guide for influencing a diverse world. In order for us to understand part of the challenge, I think we need to have a conversation about what I would call Christian speak or church speak that has been adopted. I actually, in Facebook, we've got about 500,000 social media followers. And somebody commented on my program the other day and said, "You make me sad." And I said, "Why do I make you sad?" And he said that I didn't speak in terms that he could relate to. And because he didn't understand them, it made him sad. And I began to realize that I've now been caught up in a trap of vernacular and of wording. The big sign, Jesus saves. He said to me, have I ever, and he asked this question in the dialogue, have I ever told somebody that they were going to burn in hell? And I said, no. I've never even thought that I would be in a position to point a finger at someone and say, you're going to burn in hell. He said, well, have you ever invited a homosexual to lunch? And I said, my former brother-in-law was a homosexual, died of AIDS. I had lunch with him once a week. What is your point? And he began to identify this stereotypical Christian worldview that says that if you even believe in a hell, okay, which is now a huge divide within the body as we venture outside the text of the scriptures and get into man-made theology, have we fallen into a trap of coining phrases, of using Christian colloquialisms and I want to call it lazy Christian speak that says that I'm going to paint everybody with the same brush and I hope I get some paint on somebody.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. I mean, it's interesting because what the your friend there online was describing was basically making it sound like all Christians are the exact same. And in some ways what was happening is, and in this world we're actually experiencing, unfortunately, what the church used to impose on others. I think we're starting to realize Christians, I don't like being stereotyped as being homophobic and racist and voting a certain way. But you know what? If someone wasn't in our church, if we weren't careful, we were stereotyping them and assuming that every non-believer was just a certain way. And so really what I'm pushing towards is encouraging people of faith to befriend people, even if they might vote differently, look differently, make different moral choices, or believe differently, and then learn to communicate the message of the scriptures, the message of Jesus, in a way that they would understand. And I think that's the essence of really being missionaries and being on mission. And I think what's so important and what I love, as you share your story, is you were having lunch with someone that may not have felt welcomed in a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant church, and yet you were representing Jesus to him. And that's what I think we have to realize. The body of Christ is us. We are representing him wherever we go, and so we need to love and serve, and it's in that context that we then influence the world.
Eric, I'm going to ask you a question that I wrestle with and I struggle with, and I've never asked one of my guests this question. But have we created a church that Jesus would not be welcomed in?
That is a really good question. I think that when we get caught up in the ways of the world and the politics of the world, and we bring our own woundedness and brokenness into the decisions that we make, I think you make a really good point. I think there are certainly wonderful and beautiful communities that are very welcoming. At Gateway, we say, "Come as you are," and we mean it, and people do it. and I think that there's a sense that a Jewish, maybe barefooted or wearing sandals with dirty feet, long hair, long beard, walking into a community of faith, I don't know if he looked as he did 2,000 years ago, if he would feel welcomed, or if we would welcome him in many places.
John the Baptist. I mean, if you think, you think of somebody wearing this clothing, certainly an odor upon him, unmistakable. Would he be welcome? Would he walk in and would he be greeted in the same way, or would he be given that eye? Would security be kind of moving their way over a little bit? Would the head usher be grabbing the deacon and saying, "Hey, check this out"? Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 6:10, which I consider to be the passage. I grew up Jewish, so we didn't have chapters and verses. We had books. So as I read the Christian Bible and I see it broken down in chapter and verses, I don't read 2 Corinthians 5:17 and then it ends and then 6 starts. I see 5:17 or 6:10 as a cohesive thought and one message framed, saying that I'm an ambassador, which means that I don't show the bottom of my shoe to somebody from the Far East because it's offensive.
Right.
I don't take my wife, girlfriend, or female companion scantily clad to a Middle Eastern event. I don't offer BLT to a practicing known Muslim friend.
Right.
That's an ambassador. An ambassador is respectful of the traditions, but yet represents the one who sent him, which in the case of this ambassadorship is God. The same way our ambassador to Japan is representing America. He may be there to be respectful of all their traditions, but his agenda is our agenda. It's not the Japanese agenda, it's the American agenda. And we're sent in as ambassadors and charged with that. Every single believer, when they say yes to the Lord, is now assigned an ambassadorship. They're the ministry of reconciliation. They're all ordained. People say, "I want to be in full-time ministry." The minute you said yes to Jesus, you were immersed in full-time ministry.
That's right.
But do we speak? Like if I'm the ambassador to Japan and I don't speak Japanese, but I'm fluent in Chinese, and I speak up, I will offend my entire audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I will have disrespected them because I have not taken the time to learn their language.
Right.
Is this at the core, and we're about to go to break, is this at the very core of Not Like Me?
Yeah, I think so. I think you are right. We need to communicate the message of faith, love, and hope in a way that people can understand. And Paul said to become all things to all people. And what that also means is we are the ones, followers of Jesus, that should be making the sacrifice. So when you get online and you're reading something that makes you angry, you are still representing Jesus. Are you posting on Facebook in a way that Jesus would be pleased? Are you interacting with your family and friends, your coworkers, with his agenda in mind? I think you make a beautiful point.
The question I always ask is, if you're in Walmart, would I recognize you as a believer?
Mm.
And if I wouldn't recognize you as a believer, is that my responsibility or is it yours?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking with Dr. Eric Bryant, author of Not Like Me, Learning to Love, Serve, and Influence Our Divided World. This is, I think, very, very well referenced as a field guide for influencing a diverse world. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into the text of this book from Dr. Eric Bryant. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our one-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Eric Bryant, author of the newly released book, Not Like Me, Learning to Love, Serve, and Influence Our Divided World. Eric, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
For the last 11 years, I've been teaching at a Methodist church. They befriended me, they offered me space, they gave me a Thursday night, said, we'll give you the building, teach whatever you want to teach. I've been there for 11 years, and across the street is a Chevron station, and I go into that Chevron station, as I have every Thursday night for 11 years, and I don't pay at the pump. I go in and I talk to the Pakistani owner, and for 11 years I've been doing this. And about 6 or 7 years ago, he says to me, why don't you pay at the pump? And I said, because I want to know who you are. I want to know about you. You grew up in Pakistan. You left Pakistan. Okay, you left a Muslim nation to come to America. Are you still a practicing Muslim? I am. Okay. Well, what do you believe? What's different about your experience? And he and I began to relate. And finally, about 2 years ago, he said to me, why do you still come in? You already know about the story. I said, well, I want to check on your kids. I want to check on your grandkids. I want to make sure everything's okay with you. He said, why would you want to do that? I said, because I love you. And he said, you love me? And I said, I love you. And he said, why? And I said, because you are my brother, because God created us both. And because you look at it differently than I look at it, I will continue to come until you ask me the question that I'm begging you to ask me. All right? And that is, why am I the only person in all these years who comes in consistently and pays? And then I'm going to tell you why. But I'm not going to tell you the first time. I'm going to make you beg me. Right?
That's great.
In your book, you start out with currying favor.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm trying to do with this Pakistani Muslim, is I'm trying to curry favor with him. Help us through that concept, and how do you do that?
Yes, I've discovered I have a strength from Gallup's Strengths Finder called Woo, which is called also known as winning others over. And I think that one of the things that you just described so beautifully is, do the people around us see us as loving, Are we representing Jesus in the way we treat them? Are we winning others over? And now, what's really amazing about your story, and I hope that for those watching and those listening, are the people around you going to turn to you when things are tough? They may have absolutely no spiritual interest right now in what you believe. But as you get to know them and as you hear their story, there may be a time where this new friend of yours says to you, I need you to pray, and I need help, and I want to know more. But that would never happen outside of this relationship. And really, stereotypes exist when friendships do not. And I just love how you're breaking down those barriers. And that's what we're all called to do, to actually love the people around us by getting to know their story.
I'm a victim of the great omission.
Mm.
It's the great commission in the Bible, but I'm a victim of the great omission. Until I was 44 years old, I didn't know Jesus was Jewish. Until I was 44 years old, people had asked me to go to church with them, and I would answer them, I'm Jewish, and they would say, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Oh, goodness.
And it was a punch in the gut.
Mm.
You're sorry? You're sorry that I'm Jewish? No, I'm sorry. I don't want to offend you.
Mm.
Well, why don't you want to offend me? Well, because I love you. Yeah, but you're loving me to death. You're loving me to the point where you don't want to offend me, but my eternal salvation rests in you loving me enough to offend me. To provoke me. Paul writes, Romans 11, the gift of salvation was given to the Gentiles to provoke Israel to envy.
Mm.
The amazing part about the Scripture is, and the way I love God, is that He doesn't tell us how. You tell us how. This is how to provoke others to envy. Mm. This is not just Israel. This is the Romans 11 concept that I'm going to give you a guideline of how to provoke them to envy that I can relate to you, that they want to know why I am the way I am.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and that's definitely the intent. What if we were to develop friendships with the people around us and just remove all those barriers so that we can know when to say, here's hope, or here's how I found faith. And I just, I mean, your experience growing up, and even in the South, and not having that, that omission that lasted so long. What we try to describe here at Gateway and even at Mosaic was a loving community is inclusive. Anyone can come, no matter where they may be. And a loving community is also a place where you have honest conversation. And that honest conversation sometimes is a gentle rebuke. Other times it's a challenge to take that next step of faith, whether it's saying yes to Jesus or whether it's sacrificing something in your life that's distracting you or leading towards destruction. Are we creating a loving community by including others and having hard and honest conversations?
But I want to make sure that we're clear about something. In Acts chapter 2, they didn't put a steeple on the upper room and expect the people to come.
That's right.
They were given the message and they went out, and 3,000 were saved one day, 5,000 the next. Mm-hmm. Your methodology, your value proposition is you need to go to that basketball court in the inner city where you say white man can't jump high. Is how you refer to it, and I relate. Name 10 NBA Jewish basketball players.
Right. Yeah, I'm not very good at naming any basketball players, but yes, yeah, I get your point.
Right, just not going to happen. But yet, we know that in the inner city, that drugs are being dealt at the basketball court. Drugs are being dealt in different places. And do we have the responsibility and the obligation, because of the sacrifice that was made for us, to go not by yourself and put yourself in jeopardy, but to go with a group, a small group of people, and put your toe into the water of a different culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. And actually, what's really, beautiful, Acts 1:8 talks about, all right, let's start here where we are in Jerusalem, then Judea, then Samaria, which is cross-cultural, and then to the ends of the earth. And that's part of the beauty. If you can go on a mission trip and you stretch yourself, it's cross-cultural, then all of a sudden you come back, you can do that same sort of thing, loving and serving and praying for the people around you, even if it's the basketball court in your suburb. But certainly, what if the church, which, by the way, the church is not a building, as you said, the church is not a service on Sunday, we are the church. Erwin McManus used to say, the church is not here to meet our needs. We are the church here to meet the needs of the world. It's us going out, loving and serving, dispelling the negative Christian stereotype, because we are people that are actually there, hearing their story, meeting their physical, emotional, relational needs, and it's in that context we'll have the opportunity to meet spiritual needs as well.
Austin, Texas has a reputation for being one of the most liberal cities in all of North America.
Mm-hmm.
How do you embrace using the techniques that you have in this handbook, Not Like Me? How do you approach this very liberal, outwardly LGBTQ plus with the 1.5 gainer at the end? How do you approach that world without it being this reactionary, almost Marxist handbook response that it's almost spontaneous combustion if you approach? How do you do that?
Well, it is a beautiful city. 13% attend a church, which is really low for the South. It's high for Europe, but we have more in common with Europe here in Austin than we do with Dallas. It's a post-Christian city in many ways. And what I've discovered with people, no matter where they may be on their journey, no matter what their lifestyle might be, is people want to be known. People want to be loved. People want to be understood. And what I've found to be incredibly beautiful in South Austin, which is the keep Austin weird part of Austin, it's the most anti Christian. In fact, there's a coffee shop down the road that has Sinner's Brunch every Sunday, and there's a taco place that has just down the street from me here that has Hippie Church every Sunday, where they play the Eagles and have their tambourines. So there's an anti-Christian element, but when you can get to know someone's story, befriend someone, invite them into your home. It's not, we do have a community where people come on Sunday for sure, and they check things out no matter where they may be. But they don't usually come first to a Sunday morning service. And it's, taken us years to get to this kind of place. But they'll come to my home if they know me. If I've been into their home, if we're genuine friendships, and it's not a friendship with an agenda. It's genuinely demonstrating Christ's love by dying to yourself, by serving others. That's how we actually find our life. And I think if we just saw ourselves as you described earlier, ambassadors, we're representing Jesus wherever we go. We're giving grace just as he's given us grace. We're forgiving. We are all of a sudden putting ourselves in position where someone will look at us and say, you know what? How have you made it through this? Maybe you both have a terrible boss, and you can start to describe, I actually have a bigger agenda. I just see myself as here to help my boss, even though he's difficult, and I'm here to help you. Sometimes I've had some really neat conversations with people where we'll get to that place where we start talking about God. And I'll just say to them, and it sounds very mystical and mysterious, but I genuinely mean it. I'll say, I don't think it's an accident that we ended up living on the same street and both enjoying, the same things on television. I think God brought us here that I might be able to help you find him. And it's amazing how often people who could be anti-Christian, but they're very spiritual,
Yes.
how often people want to have these kind of meaningful conversations.
It, we live in these subdivisions, we live in these housing developments. Technology has kept us from knowing our neighbors. You refer to the bounce house in the neighborhood, getting off the couch and making friends, getting your kids involved in not just the church basketball league, not just in the church softball team, but in the community itself, so that you can naturally, and I think that part of your approach, which makes it, and it's not that other approaches are not palatable, but what makes your approach more palatable is that it is integrating the average lifestyle, normal everyday events, but adding the piece that says, I am an ambassador no matter where I go. And
Correct.
if I'm not doing things that make me noticeable or recognizable, and there is no evidence of the Holy Spirit on me in my language, in my treatment, in my helping that lady unload the groceries, in my offering to, not pay at the pump, to do these kind of things, we have to be intentional about it. But intentionality and evangelical are not always synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we take it just a little bit too far and we become the stumbling block. And Paul was very clear that said that I don't want my ministry to become a stumbling block. How do you strike that balance?
Yes, you gave a great example with not paying at the pump. I think one of the things that we just need to realize is going on a mission trip can be challenging and difficult, but it's actually easy to share your faith to a complete stranger you'll never see again.
Right.
It's really hard to have those sorts of meaningful conversations with the person who lives right next door to you and can hear you yelling at your kids when you're upset. So some of the stories that I share is, if you have a birthday party, put the bounce house in the front yard instead of in the backyard so that your neighbor's kids can come. It's sitting on the front porch instead of the back porch so that you can see that neighbor who's getting groceries out of the car and can go and help them. Again, it's just about being intentional, realizing that there are opportunities all around us. And if you begin to pray, God, would you show me who can I love on your behalf today? Who needs to know their love today? And even begin to pray, and would you give me the opportunity to talk about you? I think you will be amazed. The people listening will be amazed when you open the door to God doing that in and through your life. He loves the people around us more than we do, and He wants to send us out. But it's very much like you said. It's natural. It's not knocking on the door Saturday morning. It's literally being there for folks when they need us, and that won't happen unless we know them and they know us.
Sure. Bob Weiner, I don't know if you know the name Bob Weiner Ministries, great, hundreds of thousands of campus outreaches. Bob has a card, it's a business card, and on there are 10 lines, and he tells you write the names of 10 people.
That's great.
On that card, and carry that card with you everywhere, that when you see that person, it's not, you know how that cartoon that says, oh my goodness, there's Bob, he asked me to pray for him, dear Lord, please bless Bob, and Bob comes close and you say, Bob, I've been praying for you. He said, take these 10 names, these 10 neighbors, these 10 people at school, whatever it is, take these 10 and be intentional about praying for divine encounters with them, ministry opportunities, and doors to be opened to share the gospel. Imagine if each one of us took 10.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we took 5, just 5, and we said, this is who we want to be able to reach, to invite them. And it may not be to Sunday worship. It may be to the Bounce House event. It may be to the junk sale for people raising money for a mission trip. It may be that, hey, listen, I'm going over to the yard sale. Come on with me. I heard the other day your kid's bicycle tire was flat. We probably get a whole bicycle,
right,
for what it would cost you for a tire, because you have to pay attention. You actually have to listen. And I think that part of your strategy is that if you're not plugged in, okay, a lamp's still a lamp. It just sheds no light unless it's plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
And this guidebook is a guidebook of how to plug in.
Yeah, that's right. It's listening to God, being willing to be led by God, and knowing the needs of the folks that are around you. I tell a story in the book of how I was part of a life group, a small group in our home, a Bible study, and one of the women in the group said, I won't be here next week because I'm performing in a play. And I said, oh, well, we'll miss you and we'll pray for you. Hope it goes well. And after she left, my wife and a couple others said, well, why don't we go to her play? And I thought, well, yeah, you're right. And you know what? We went to that play. She was so encouraged. We got to meet her family and her friends that were not connected to any church. And one of the first things that her family members told her was, those folks from your church are really nice people. It opened the door in a way that instead of praying for her from a distance, we just went along and enjoyed the evening with her. And again, it's about being intentional. It's a lot about letting God guide you and being there for people. And really, we live in a ever-changing world, and that's why this book, I think, is so important. Because so what do you do with the person who might make different moral choices? How do you love and serve and reach a Pakistani who's Muslim? And there are ways, very intentional ways, to develop relationship, to get to the place where you're aware of their story. Then they're going to start asking for your story. And as you're trying to live a life that wins them over, you're going to see the opportunities blow you away.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example. Your book was sent to me quite a while ago. We booked 6 to 8 weeks in advance. And I was out to dinner with somebody for the first time, and they were concerned that I was, because I have these ordinations and degrees, and I'm in this business, and I'm on TV for 3 hours live every day, and then I speak 4 days, 3 nights, and 1 day a week.
Right.
So I'm pretty out there, and I normally would pray at the meal, but knowing this person was not a praying person, I just prayed silently to myself, didn't make a big deal about it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a text the other day saying, listen, I got some news, and if you wouldn't mind, if you still do that pray thing, would you pray for me?
Wow, that's great.
It was applying. I don't know if I wouldn't have insisted on being me and saying, you may not be comfortable, but if you don't mind, I'm going to take a moment to pray and draw attention to my spirituality. I just didn't address it at all. But yet the response came because of that sensitivity. And that was an application from your book.
Oh, that's great. Well, and it's a beautiful application. I think what you did is you're not denying who you are. It's knowing your context. It's absolutely being more concerned with that person than myself. And look, in the end, he knows you well enough to know you are a praying person, and he turned to you when he needed help. I think that's beautiful. That's fantastic.
Well, and I want to compliment you. I do 3 of these a day, and I read all the books that come. So it means I read 15 books a week.
Wow.
And not all of them are good. To be honest with you, not all of them are good. But I was able to draw from your book because of my experience of being almost rebuffed, almost Christians spoken out of the kingdom, of having such a personal sensitivity, that I was overly sensitive in phraseology or reference points, that you actually gave me a comfort level and a strength, a silent strength that, excuse me, allowed me to be more comfortable in not doing something when I normally would have done it, which is almost antithetical, but yet it gives you that sensitivity, and it really is a guidebook, and I strongly recommend it. We've been talking with Dr. Eric Bryant, author of Not Like Me, Learning to Love, Serve, and Influence Our Divided World, drawn on real-life encounters in a shockingly new environment for himself, and how to navigate in his life this diversity. And all of us are facing it, and we're all too concerned about being politically correct to talk about how do we approach it. And this is an honest approach to how to approach the unapproachable.
I appreciate you saying that very much. And I did want your viewers and listeners to know we actually have a discounted version of the book for all of you at ericbryant.org. Just click on the book and follow the links there. But thank you for the encouraging words, and I'm grateful for your ministry, just the way you continue to put in front of us people we should be listening to and learning from. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. God bless you for that. Dr. Eric Bryant, again, Not Like Me, Learning to Love, Serve, and Influence Our Divided World. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.